Good evening and welcome. I'm Spencer Hodgetts, founder of Reboundog, and one of the reasons Reboundog came together was the observation that there's a lack of communication between people, there's a lack of conversations between people, and there's also a huge disrupt in connectivity in society. There's too much of the them and us, and I feel it personally because I grew up from a broken home in the 60s, 70s, with rescued strayers of my only companion, walking on beaches for miles, and I learnt to listen, and I think that's what we need to do. And the purpose of bringing these people around this table together is to try and work out how we can engage the marginalised, the disenfranchised sides of the Cumbrian community. We suffer horrendously, as Caroline knows too well, that we have the highest rate of animal abuse in the UK, in the county. We're suffering from poverty, we're suffering from isolation, we're suffering from domestic abuse, and they're all not so much solvable. We've tried for a long time and the burden has always fallen on the charity sector to find a solution. I believe it's time for a new conversation. I believe it's time for people to work together to bring the animal sector together, to bring the business sector together, to bring the tech sector together. So we're not just trying to solve it in an isolated silo. We're looking at how we can do this as a holistic county, whether it's the down in Barrow, where there's a lot of poverty, whether it's coming into the West Coast, where you've seen the mines close over the years, or whether you're looking at the very rural communities and people say, oh, the lakes are pretty. There's a lot of isolation, there's a lot of farming communities that have, there's a high suicide rate in Cumbria as well. And again, that is large in the agricultural community. And there are solutions, but we need to think about having conversations of how we change those and create those solutions. Because too often in my lifetime, we've always seen consultants and the like come in and say, oh, we've got this wonderful solution and it's this, and you must do this and tick this box and you'll pay us whatever, and it's the answer. And what a lot of that doesn't do is actually listen and engage the people they're trying to help or that are in need of those solutions. And that's what we really need to do, is engage that excluded side of the community, whether it's in a business sector, whether it's in an agricultural sector, whether it's in a domestic sector. And we're not going to solve it overnight, we're not going to solve it with this conversation tonight around this table, but we can start to sow the seed and show the possibilities. And we'll later on Simon and Maria will demonstrate a wonderful example that's actually working in Brazil, and I thank them for the time. So I'd like to introduce my guests tonight, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Caroline.
I'm Caroline Johnson. I'm the Vice Chair of the Association of Dogs and Cats Homes, with a background in animal welfare, animal rescue, land-based and vocational education, and charity, third sector generally.
Graham Holloway, Technician Cumbria. We're about bringing Cumbria's different tech communities together, joining the dots and forming conversations for people in business.
Oh, very nice. I'm Maria Moraes Robinson. I am CEO Brazil of Holonomics. Holonomics is an international business consultancy. We specialize in strategy, customer experience, change management. And I am a co-author of some books. The most recent is Designing Customer Experiences with Soul. And I am very happy to be here. It's great to be here with you in this conversation.
I'm Simon Robinson, CEO worldwide of Holonomics. And in addition to designing customer experiences with Soul, we're also the co-authors of Deep Tech and the Amplified Organization and Holonomics, Business Where People and Planet Matter. And also, most recently, we've just launched a new publication on Medium called Soul Guided Systems. And Soul Guided Systems describes our approach to developing ecosystems whose purpose is transformative impact. So I think tonight we'll be sharing some of the insights and also our experiences of developing and setting up Soul Guided Systems. And hopefully there'll be a lot to inspire, this conversation and people watching the podcast.
Thank you. Caroline, you talked earlier, and we've known each other for a while, you talked about the benefits of the human-animal bond and how that can actually impact on disenfranchised communities. Could you enlighten us?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, animals do not judge. Animals are that non-judgmental friend, and I think everyone can maybe remember a time when they've had a relationship with an animal, in sort of having that conversation. I remember as a 16-year-old sort of sobbing my eyes out because some boyfriend dumped me at that point, and I had to call my dog and tell me all about it. And they don't judge us. And we know through our work in animal rescue that one of the last things people will ever give up is their dog or their cat. And we've had experiences in Cumbria, having worked in animal charities in Cumbria, where people have refused to go into sheltered housing because they can't take their pet. They don't want to go into various situations. They don't want to go into particular employment because of their pet. And actually, we know that bond is so strong. It's well documented, health benefits, mental health benefits. And with young people in particular, where we're looking at trying to teach leadership skills, teach collaboration, understand how the world works, the human-animal bond is so powerful and can be transformative for communities, change lives. And yeah, it's just something that we really do need to focus on. We often view animal welfare as a very separate to the human side. And actually, we need to look at it holistically, because actually, if having an animal and ownership is preventing people engaging, developing and understanding, then actually we need to make sure that we've got facilities for both. We know that over 60% of households have pets, so that's a huge number of pets that we need to be able to accommodate.
Yeah.
And then touching on that, we talked earlier, this thing with the bond and this non-judgment, there's also this listening skills, and we were talking before this call went live about the listening skills, because the dog, the cat is not judging you, so it's listening without prejudgment. And then how do we develop that skill? So if the child, for instance, has that skill of listening to an animal with no judgment, how does he or she then go outside of, say, Cumbria and work in Germany or the oil rigs or wherever, and use that in management or business or life? It works into even in domestic relationships. And again, just touching the other thing that is very prevalent in the UK at the moment, and also in the States, is this thing where there's domestic abuse, violence perpetrated against the pet by the but again, surely there was a potential for that listening skills developed through the human-animal bond to then. So could you add to that?
Absolutely. I mean, in Cumbria, we have in South Cumbria, we have a fabulous organisation that's working with people and management skills and communication skills with horses. So actually looking at, because again, such a prey species, so important that we can actually read their body language as well as the verbal communication. And something we're trying to bring in to schools at the moment is working with search dogs. I was touching on it earlier. One of the things I'm trying to look at is actually working with search dogs in schools to actually develop that non-verbal communication understanding of pets. When I work with owners across the county, sometimes you say, what does your dog or cat really like? And they're going, food. We're like, okay, let's narrow it down. What type of food? And the answer isn't there because we haven't got that communication. We haven't necessarily understood that what we're looking for is that non-verbal. We're looking for those subtle body language, which is so important in all of our interactions. We want to be able to look at people and understand what they're saying, and we need to apply that to animals. And animals is a great way. It's a non-judgmental way. If I'm talking to you, actually I'm going, oh my gosh, is she thinking I'm really bad? Whereas I'm talking to my dog, saying, is that dog looking like that? I don't know. And I can actually have that time to think a little bit more importantly.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And Graham, how do you see that following into the tech side when you're bringing Tech District Cumbria together, where you talked earlier about, between you and I, about the benefits of using immersive technologies for disenfranchised companies? And am I thinking of virtual reality? It's not my field.
Yeah, I think what's really powerful about immersive technologies in particular, like we discussed, is that it allows us to bring those experiences to people that maybe can't have access to, maybe they're allergic to pets, or maybe it's about reliving experiences that are personal to them, that maybe emote certain reactions that they then need to help with or for therapy. So I think one of the great facilities we just opened up in Whitehaven last week is Levels, and that's got the ability to provide those sort of immersive experiences. And then people can go there and get that help, that therapy, or it can help school kids learn in new ways. And then that obviously is massively empowering for those that maybe aren't from traditional education as well, because then you're like, maybe you want to learn sat down and listening to teachers, you want to learn through physical engagement or through storytelling. So there's a lot more powerful ways of achieving what we want to.
Yeah, it's looking at a new way of educating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember in school I hated it. Yeah.
Which really fits in with the dogs and or animals and that bond we can have. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the most amazing things we was involved with was teaching young people in that land-based setting. So we had a young man, 16-year-old, who had a very traumatic incident and couldn't engage with schools, was excluded from 4 or 5, came into the land-based centre, started working, and we thought, actually, how do we keep you in school? And the answer was the only thing he was engaged with was fishing. So actually, let's teach him through fishing. And he stayed with us for 4 years and went out into the world with a qualification and with that understanding. And I think that those different experiences, trying to typecast people into a certain box, doesn't work. We know that experiential learning is so important.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting here is when we're working with, say, marginalised communities, it's an ability to really value the intelligence and wisdom, but that may not be traditionally valued, like i.e. academic qualifications. And it's interesting that the relationship between, say, dogs and marginalised communities, because dogs are so intelligent, and it's their ability to completely make sense of a context. And I think sometimes maybe we, as a society, undervalue the intelligence of pets. And in the same way, it's just so important not to undervalue intelligence of different communities, but really understand how we can use technology to really bring out the best in people.
And to give opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, so one of the questions is not how can we impose this VR solution, but how can you involve communities in the development and evolution of the technology? You know, that's in a way that's meaningful to them.
No, I completely agree. Yeah.
And would you add to that, Maria, from your Brazilian context of how you see that? You talk a lot about human value. You talked in the past about your human values, and you look at it probably the way that we don't in the Northern Hemisphere. I'd love to hear your intake on that.
Oh yeah. And listening to what you said about the relationship between human and animals and pets and dogs. It's interesting because they are able to make us to manifest what we really are. That are the 5 universal human values of love, truth, peace, rightness, and non-violence. So we are, in fact, the manifestation of these 5 universal human values, and the relationship with dogs, cats, pets, animals in general, makes us much more humans. This is the point.
It brings out our humanity, doesn't it?
Yeah, brings out our humanity.
Yeah.
So I think this is the key point. And mostly in this moment of the world. In Brazil, we have our challenges as well, and big challenges. It's a big country. And so I think we have to see ourselves as a community and in peace with the nature. This is the point. We isolated from them, from the nature, but in fact we have to learn how to come back and do things in a most harmonious way. And we have some experiences as well that it would be nice to share.
But you talk, looking at that, if you use Cumbria as a whole, it has huge potential to, I won't say use because that's an abused term, but to be part of nature. And we have, and I talked about growing up on a beach, I learned as a kid what an ecosystem was and how to walk in it. So I find this thing about nature and being outside of it very strange. Oh, we must go on this nature trek. What do you mean? I come from a slightly, but I get it. But yes, it's this disconnect. We have become disconnected as a society, as humans, from nature, from each other, of what it means to be in a relationship. We don't have granny in the UK. We don't have granny over the gate anymore because the communities have disappeared. We can see that in anywhere in Cumbria, Whitehaven, Barrow, wherever it is, that we haven't got that community and those generations there. We've changed. So the question becomes then, how do we use what we're talking about to create examples so people learn that, oh, it's actually, we are humane. That's the difference. It's going beyond creating a social impact solution as an outcome. It's looking at how do we create collectively, how do we cause a humane society, which is totally inclusive. It comes without this thing I keep banging about, this prejudgment and this labelling and things, and are you judging me because I've got a check shirt on? But it's how do we engage so that those who are sitting on the outside will think, how do they feel comfortable walking in to a dog rescue place? How do they feel comfortable walking into the levels in Whitehaven? I know that's designed to do so, but other examples, how do they learn to be comfortable asking a question in school? Because I always ask too many questions in school. The why. So how do we cause that society? And Simon, Maria, you've touched on a wonderful example. You've done this in Brazil. We'd love to hear more about what you've done in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. We'll talk about that in a second, but just listening to you, you've just triggered some ideas, because again, if the key theme here today is like reimagining Cumbria. And if I want to talk about, say, our design principles, why does what we do work? And I think there's two things. Hearing everyone talk, we work a lot with self-esteem and identity. And there's two different levels. There's the identity of Cumbria, because for me, as a British person, I still don't feel that Cumbria has a strong identity. And I wonder if that comes from the self-esteem of the community, despite so many projects, so many regions, activities here being of value. And then when we're working with, say, disadvantaged communities, again, we're not trying to impose a solution. We're asking ourselves, how can we develop self-esteem? How can we help this particular community express itself and demonstrate its own value to the wider world? So there's like a couple of design kind of principles here when we're developing soul-guided systems. And we've actually done this in Brazil, with a rural community in Minas Gerais in central Brazil. Maria, I don't know if you want to introduce the projects. I think there's a lot here that can, the principles of what we're doing, it just really seems so relevant to what we can achieve here in Cumbria and the potential. Because it's like seeing the potential here.
Exactly.
Isn't there?
So very briefly, talk about this region. Is a region full of minings, and we have lots of small communities that sometimes they lose the ability to see their future, what will happen, and so the children mostly, what is the future of these children. So in this project, we were called to help this community to develop its self-esteem, and with children in schools to develop the entrepreneurship mentality and how they can see the
self-empowerment. Because what is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is a self-empowered person. And again, Brazil is highly entrepreneurial, but there's a lot of very small, we're not talking big businesses like internet startups, very small family-owned businesses that empowers people, gives them the ability to.
So we created a project, we developed a project in order to develop the self-esteem and to value the culture, the community, the knowledge, the wisdom of that community, full of history. We discovered lots of history from the beginning of Brazil. It was incredible, the region and everything they had there. And for many reasons were not valued. So we developed a project bringing lots of different parts of the society together.
Yeah.
First of all, we talked to the community, what they really would like to do in terms of develop their knowledge and everything. And so we created an app.
Yeah, they chose to have an app developed. It wasn't us like imposing. We said, this is a possibility. And they had a number of different options available, and they chose us as a project that seemed to offer, exactly what they were looking for.
Why do you think they chose that?
Because they wanted it to be inserted in the how can I say in the digital era.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's a very isolated, very small community.
They have difficulty with internet access. The internet access came from the Wi-Fi of the kind of the village library. Just to give you an idea of just how rural, it's a demanding project to help empower them through technology, but it is possible.
Yeah.
Through.
So it's a very nice story, but it's a very long story. But we connected with Elifas Andreato. He was one of the biggest and most important illustrator in Brazil. And he created a very amazing magazine that was very popular, a very big success in Brazil, because in this magazine he valued the Brazilian culture, and it was a magazine very nice because he brought some very nice quiz, but very intelligent way of doing it. So we brought him and his son in the project, and we involved one project in Rio de Janeiro that developed how can I say
the Vida Web. It's been set up to really help young people from disadvantaged communities in Rio de Janeiro. It helps them, it provides them with IT training and the support mechanisms to place these young people in big businesses after having completed the training. So it's a very complete service.
So that's it. So you've got the follow-up, because what I've seen in my lifetime in this country is we'll say the mind shut and we'll say, create an employment training program, the government comes in and we'll do this. But there's no jobs afterwards. No. So there's no complete service. It's a tack-on plaster effect, sticking plaster to a problem. But what you seem to be describing is actually designing it so it follows through. So these kids from the favelas can actually find employment in the skill set they're training.
Yeah. And in fact, this model is, we call it social impact as a service. Mm-hmm. And when you have this service mentality, it's not just about offering the training and then going. It's you're offering the service to these young people, and you're offering a service to the employees, because what's a big problem in IT? There's a skills gap, and big businesses are struggling to find fully qualified people. But with these young people, you're offering a service that helps the big businesses deploy them. And a lot of these kids, it's been incredible seeing them have great careers. They're growing, just seeing them flourish and grow. But, Maria and I have provided mentoring support as well. It's important to really provide that mentoring and support. It's not just about the training, it's understanding them as whole people.
Yeah, so we brought them.
They provided the programming developments.
Yeah, and it was wonderful because Simon and I were able to training, to how can I say, mentoring them.
Yeah, we mentored because they don't necessarily have the project management skills, but they're intelligent. So it's like, this is what a project is. This is how we go from delivery to deployment, and they're learning as they develop.
Picking up what Graham said about education, it's looking at education at a different angle, isn't it? Rather than the old school route thing that you read Charles Dickens, and I think I proceeded one of them overnight, because I didn't like reading. But it's how do you you're given an opportunity to be engaged, but you're also giving an opportunity for a job, for employment, which then the impact is from underneath, then that disrupts society because you're providing a more stable society because you've got less people being sitting on the margins.
Exactly.
And again, if you look at the meaning, it's like you've got young people from Rio de Janeiro, massive metropolis. If you look at how meaningful this is, they were like, wow, we're developing something that's really helping this really rural region, like miles and miles away from Rio.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's meaningful to everyone. It's meaningful. It gives them meaning. It's like, wow, we're really helping this other community. It's interesting.
And the app, we used the gamification principles in order to be very attractive for children. We talked to teachers. We interviewed a lot of people from the community to really understand the language, the level. How could we created the app.
Yeah, which community leaders to involve, to actually feature in the app. So it's a reflection of the community.
The community. So
it's not about, it's the community representing themselves.
Does Vino Web, do you work backwards, say, from business to sort of the learning side, going, right, this is what industry needs, and then sort of train them based on that, or is it forwards?
No, absolutely. There's I know some of the people watching this will be technical, but there's front end and back end training opportunities. I.e., they have web developers, graphic designers, but also there's people developing computer systems as well. So the young people decide which area of IT they want to specialise in, and of course, because there's another company, First T, involved, a major IT consultancy involved, they're the ones that are close to IT clients, you know, the major businesses that are hiring IT people. So it's, you're absolutely right. It's vital to be close to what the actual real demand is, because it wouldn't be fair to say train and create an expectation and then not really have the opportunities waiting.
Because obviously the problem with education is it's just teaching but not actually applicable then when you go into industry.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it goes back to a conversation I had yesterday actually with somebody, a young person, 23-year-old, who has done a 4-year degree to do a canine training course. Fabulous. She wants to be a trainer. And she said, if I move, she went south to do that, so she moved back. She wants to move back. Will somebody employ me?
Yeah.
And the answer is probably not. It's actually about being self-employed. But we haven't equipped her with those skills. Yeah. We haven't equipped her with that business, that marketing, those elements. So a lot of our rural industry is about self-employment, particularly our agriculture, animal care. We need to make sure that... she looked terrified when I mentioned the word. And actually, she was saying, where can I get that experience? And the answer is we need to develop that, because how do we teach people the skills to create their own entrepreneurship?
Yeah, and again, it's like to break out of that cycle, it's projects like Almanac that Maria's describing. You're actually creating on-the-job training. And also a lot of these young people during the training, the idea is to give them placements, you know, during the training, so they can at least start to get that real world experience, because otherwise, you know, there's a vicious circle. If you don't have the real world experience, no one would really want to employ them. So, but again, there's a lot of people like ourselves, businesses, that are kind of sponsoring this by saying we've found opportunities to give these young people real world experience during the training, and that's what works. You know, you're not necessarily going out saying, oh, we're looking for sponsorship. It's like, no, we want opportunities. Yeah. So it's a different model. It's not like a funding model. It's how can people like us, and you know, we obviously are close to big businesses, how can we help locate these young people and give them, you know, quite junior jobs to begin with, but it's a step in the door, and it just really helps give them that confidence that they can flourish.
It's growing our own, isn't it? It's growing our own techniques, our skills, our skill sets. And we can do so much if we invest in these young people, or even people doing a career change. And it goes back to a conversation we had a little bit earlier about valuing the value of professions. Actually, a lot of our rural sector industries are not necessarily valued in society like others. And actually, we find young people switched off for them because actually they don't command the bright lights, the big bucks, the names, etc. but they have so much value to their community and so much satisfaction. We've talked already about emotional regulation, cortisol, stress levels, and connection with nature. That is so powerful, but until we can value those skills, until people can be encouraged that they have a value, and it's not monetary necessarily, can be, but not always, they're rarer. But it's such a thing, we can influence that dynamic shift.
Yeah, exactly. And with mostly with girls.
Yeah.
Because I did a very nice work with them, because you have to work with self-esteem and to understand the value, to understand that I have a place in this, the whole scenario, and so it is very important to do this work with children, with adolescents, and give them the self-confidence.
Yeah. And it goes back to Spencer's point of how do we create those communities, because by harnessing sort of those intergenerational learning opportunities. Again, I spoke to you earlier about I spent some time living in the Outer Hebrides, and actually we had a very similar situation where young people were moving away from the island, and by utilising those local craftspeople, those local professionals, so a traditional boat builder, who actually then went and taught traditional boat building to young people, we've got that intergenerational relationship, which then brings in that how do we get that granny over the garden gate syndrome, those community feels, by harnessing the skills, which we have so much in Cumbria, harnessing those to develop our young people and to develop the future.
Yeah, I mean, one of the starting points, Maria and I were actually advising Viner Web as well as mentoring. And they originally started off with their positioning. How are they explaining themselves to potential sponsors? They said, we work with vulnerable people from disadvantaged communities. And I said, well, no, that is what you're doing, but that's not principally what you're doing. I said to them, think about your positioning and how you're going to offer value to big businesses. Don't think about what you can ask from big business. Think about how you can explain your value to them. And I said, no, you work with very talented people from non-traditional academic backgrounds, and these people, with their lived experience, can offer a huge amount of value. And that completely transformed the way Viner Web thought about how they position themselves. And from that conversation came the idea of social impact as a service. Do you see what I mean? So again, the use of language is like, yes, we talk about, say, disadvantaged and marginalised, but no, people with non-traditional educational paths.
And with lots of skills and lots of resilience.
Yeah.
So they have lots of qualities that are very precious for business, for life.
Yeah.
So
they'll be hungry to sort of prove themselves, and
and that doesn't just engage the provider. The language can completely disenfranchise the individual and the learner. I'm disadvantaged, I can't get there. It's that mindset. So we need to be really careful across the whole thing about what language we're using and how we
If you pick on me, one of my professional backgrounds is a truck driver. And it just stops the conversation. I've been there. It just literally stops the conversation.
Why do you think that is?
It's the old labour image, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an old Victorian labour image. You're the serf. It's the serf, them and us, and it's that. It's your. My first background is a professional horticulturalist. I did train with Bellamy back in Durham University years ago and such like. That's a marginalised industry. Truck driving is. The fact the whole of the logistics industry worldwide, society as we know today, would stop without it.
Yes.
It's not a highly valued product. The fact that I didn't come from a traditional background, but I ended up sitting with the global board of the logistics company when they sold it, and you realise that those people who are global CEOs are actually just human, like us in this room today. It's just Hampton level. I remember Peter saying, the global CEO said, do you know what? He said, I'm just an employee like you, I just get paid more money and got more responsibilities. But you asked the question, so why? Because it's that label. It drives me insane, which is why I'm so passionate about bringing this together as reimagining Cumbria. So we're not labelling the farming community, we're not labelling the nuclear industry, we're not labelling anybody, the mining or whatever. or you talked, Caroline, you talked about the hospitality, the hotel
Yes.
industry. We're not late. This is what we need to look at, is changing the language.
Yeah.
Is what you've so eloquently put, is how do we change the language about exclusion?
Yeah.
That's what this will evolve, these conversations will evolve into, is thinking, how do we change that language?
Yeah.
So we're not ostracised.
But it goes back to that rich tapestry, doesn't it? We were talking about earlier, those cultures, as you said, hospitality, agriculture, engineering, that brings the county together.
Yes.
And it can do so much without the language. Apologies.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of then begs the question, like, we describe Cumbria as rural, is using that word in itself as a defeatist almost. Is it we already are a connected Cumbria, and if you frame it that way, then you're already solving the problem. Whereas if you say you're rural, are you then insinuating actually you're creating more of the issue?
I remember when I moved up here, and we
flip it.
lived near Ellswater, which is in the lakes, which is where that house was I showed you. And I went to a business networking thing, and I didn't realise that the lakes was in the hub of, and the rest of the Cumbria was a different. It was more or less two counties. You got that, and then you got the more or less the industrialised Carlisle going down the west coast with the big industries and things, and then coming into the south, and they were like two separate sides. But whereas if you frame it as rural, maybe the outside people don't see themselves as much rural as the lakes do, and where you are up in the northeast, and that's the difference. It's how we ask the question that you asked for InnoWeb.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we see ourselves as a county? How do we see ourselves? Are we rural, or it's always the case, isn't it? As soon as we put a label, describe something with a label, and we use rural, everybody in this room has a different opinion of what rural is. Completely.
It's a mindset.
It's a mindset. So we have to be, if we're going to reimagine Cumbria, I'm saying not tomorrow, but in time to come, what are we reimagining from? And do we, I'll be flippant, do we actually need a label? Is it just Cumbria? I mean, do we need, Cumbria is, or what? There's a different way of looking at the issue.
I think it's not helpful just to have Cumbria, but the question is, how can we use technology to allow the community to express itself? And just for one example, if someone from Brazil said to me, "Oh, Simon, tell me about Cumbria," it's one of the most beautiful regions of the UK, and it's active. If you're active and you're outdoors, it's incredible. That is Cumbria. But again, there's so much more. There's many different layers. And that's where the technology comes in.
Is how you presented the Cumbria to me.
Oh yeah, to Maria.
When I went to Keswick.
Of course.
It was like exactly.
Oh yeah, it's one of the most beautiful, fantastic parts to be in.
Yeah.
Again, that's not so much a label, but it's the valuing of it. But again, with technology, it's like there's a lot happening here. So how do you use technology to help the community communicate its own rich tapestry to the outer?
And we must remember that we have affection for things that we know.
Yes.
So we have to give opportunity for people to really know about things. Although we are in the information era, lots of information everywhere, we don't have knowledge enough about things, and knowledge that are able to really explain something. So I think this is the opportunity, because on the other hand, we have all the technology helping us. This project was only possible bringing people from Rio, in Minas, and other people together because we had the technology. So we have to see the technology as a great opportunity to create a real community. I think this is the point.
And also, one of the other aspects, it was an incredible example of technology plus art. If you could look at Elifas, he's one of the most culturally important artists for Brazil. So how do you connect that artistic consciousness with the development of technology? And again, Spencer, I know one of your great questions is how do you develop platforms? But often one of the big mistakes that big businesses make, they start by saying, "Oh, how can we use AI, or how can we develop this technology? That's not the starting point.
No.
It's what are we really trying to achieve? And often you do need that artistic consciousness to expand people's consciousness of what's available, what's possible, working with the lived experience of people. And then the technology will enable that vision.
So the technology becomes the facilitator, not the be-all and end-all. It's not the end-all. And we're not trying to be a tech county. We're using tech for social benefit.
And it's also the facilitation of opportunity. So again, we've talked in the past about access to particular courses. Certainly, I would say in land-based and animal courses, it's hard. We are a geographically isolated county. And again, I've had people who come to me and say, how do I become a dog groomer? Well, the answer is, actually, from where you are, it's in a different county, and you're going to have to physically change. And how do you do that for an evening class when you're on a budget? And so technology has that huge power to enable provision of courses, not just in the land-based sector, but in so many sectors where we don't have that provision. And it can be that enabler that we have. It's not just about connecting, but it's actually connecting outside of the county and bringing those skills in, which is what we need. And retaining our young people who have got that connection.
Because again, like with Almanac, we developed that totally during COVID. The project started just before COVID, and the idea is we would travel to the schools, do the, meet
personally.
We had all these plans, and the COVID came along and said, nope, not happening. But with the desire, it's possible. And we connected like people, it was Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, still managed the project.
And it was really nice. It was really incredible. And it was really interesting how during the development of the project we brought, as I said, the history of the place and the buildings, the architecture and everything that they have there that are wonderful. And during this process, the young people start to be very, wow.
Oh, really? This is us?
And very engaged.
From the community where it was being built for, or for the people building it in regional area?
The people we were building it for.
Yeah. And so we must to rescue the sense of curiosity that I always say that when we are a child, we have this very naturally. And when we grow up, we start to be a little more, but it's inside ourselves. And so we have to, and we saw this happening during the project.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about with emergent properties. It's being sensitive to those moments where something really wants to flourish, something really wants to grow. It's like, allow it there. Don't try and impose restrict.
It's changing that sort of no and it can't happen to how. And that's those sort of reframing those questions, which perhaps we're not necessarily quite so good at.
It's the what if question, isn't it?
It is.
It's what if the possibility, if we didn't go back to this idea of labels that we were talking about just now, and the implications of having a label, of being a truck driver. And I then reframed it as a logistics job. I know it's a bit logistics job, whatever. But if you looked at what the value is, going back to this account, it's the value and how you've reframed that. And thinking, well, it doesn't actually, in my language, it doesn't matter. If I'm only a truck driver, I'm still contributing to society because I'm adding value. It doesn't matter if I'm just a kitchen porter. My first job when I left school was a galley boy on the car ferry from Holyhead to Southern Ireland, sorry. But it doesn't matter if I'm just the galley boy, because I'm still contributing to the service that Stena Line or whatever it was back in the day operates. And it's allowing people to express their value individually for who they are, for their skill set, giving them the opportunities to grow and develop through tech, through the human-animal bond and other means, and skill and education, and working out how do we. It's an allowance, isn't it? We've talked in other conversations about sentience and so forth. It's actually allowing people to be human and not be pigeonholed into a box. And the old school system, the old business school system, you must jump through hoops if you want to be team leader or something in a logistics company or something. Well, actually, what if I had that idea? Because I'd listened to this dog when I was a kid, so I can understand the disruption, the problem this person, your employee, is having. So we're reducing costs, for instance. But it's allowing people to be themselves, individuals, without putting the labels of all the current labels of X, Y, and Z on that are so prevalent at the moment. Individuals have their own value, going back to the basics of it. So how do we encourage it? How do we develop systems? How do we reimagine Cumbria? Maybe so it's not a rural Cumbria as a label, but it's Cumbria, and that's why we live here, because we can be free. Sounds a bit old school hippie, doesn't it? Showing my age, but something along those lines. So I can be myself. Yeah, but I'm happy, and the other thing comes into this equation is safety, is personal safety. So the individual, whether it's a school child or an adult or a teenager, feels safe within their own community. And that's where a lot of change comes from, that you can walk down the street at night or walk down wherever, for instances of it. But how do we allow that to happen? How do we reimagine so the society in Cumbria is an exemplar of that society where we are safe? Not so much rural, because some parts aren't, but maybe how do we reimagine it so it's me, it's you. We are Cumbria.
I think it's got a really good opportunity with technology and what's now possible. And one of the reasons I started Texture Cumbria is about enabling, because I helped do some work around how to grow Cumbria and keep younger people in the county. And so, like, tech jobs have the ability to people to sort of work remotely. There's a lot more people, say, working from London or working for London-based companies that are actually up here. And there's no reason people can't have skill sets and develop them here and export them. But I think technology at that point where we can enable it and you can enjoy the beautiful landscapes we've got, and you can have that active lifestyle, but you can also have a professional job. And I think that's really important to be able to celebrate that and help redefine Cumbria's identity through enabling people to have those careers. Because at the moment, those opportunities don't exist in the county. You've got large players which contribute greatly to what the county does, but like we've talked about in off-record conversations about how when industries move on, it leaves behind people without jobs, disparity, impoverishment, and actually those communities, if they're around those industries, if they can be fostered and grown, then when those industries move on or change, there'll still be people with jobs and communities to stay here.
Brilliant idea. Because you've seen so often, Simon and I have a Southwest, as does Graham, and we've seen it with the docks. Where with the Plymouth docks shut down, government decision, no, we're not going to build warships or whatever, I'm making it up, whatever, and there's no support system. So you've got this broken society, there's no support. But if you're doing what Graham's talking about, creating nuclei around the outside of the industry, so when that, say, Barrow shipyard shuts down for whatever, I'll make it up, in the locality.
Contracts change.
The contracts change, it goes to somewhere else, but those people shall have those skill sets they can sell and can create an income, because one of the things we touched on poverty is this lack of contingency of income. That's one of the problems. It's not, there's no job, my parents' generation, it's jobs for life. So it didn't matter. You went to work for ICI or whatever, like my dad did, and you stayed there for the whole career, or went to IM or whatever. But that doesn't happen anymore. But instead, and Simon touched on entrepreneurship. If we're creating entrepreneurial opportunities for the next generation, that they can take those entrepreneurial skills, whether you're an IT person, as you worked with some of the you're talking about the Viner Web thing, where they're taking those skills. What if they were secure? And you talked about this lady who scared the bejesus out. How do I become you have to go self-employed. In my language. But it doesn't matter to her, because if that dog training opportunity in Cumbria moves, and she could either maybe do it remotely.
Anywhere,
Because I know people who do online courses all over the world in behavioural work and stuff. But you've got that resilience, that's the other word, isn't it?
Because I'll tell you what, what this is triggering now. I was helped co-found a number of startups in the 90s, one of which was Digital Bridges, a Scottish mobile gaming company. Scotland did very well with the branding, shall we say, of Silicon Glen. So we had the very small commercial office in London near clients, but the software developers were up in Fife. Now, if I think of Cumbria, I know that you guys are talking about, we're isolated, but when my mental model of Cumbria is you've got Glasgow, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, kind of encompassing Cumbria. And if you think of like what is this century's Silicon Glen, it could be Cumbria, the Silicon Lakes. This is where this is one of the destinations that software developers would love to be based. And the problem, though, is you often do need physical meetings. But look at this arc of major urban areas that Cumbria could serve.
And so easy to access.
Do you know what I mean? This is what I'm thinking. My mental model is not of Cumbria as a rural region, but how can it serve?
And I think that's one of the key problems with Cumbria. It sees itself as the central rural lake thing it's a generational thing, so it comes back to the old Viking things and the Danes and so forth. The Tiespin and the Reavers and things between it's locked between England and Scotland, so it's shut itself away. We didn't have the transport links, the physical transport links back in the 50s, 60s, and it's continued that. But to become I'll use the word is a silicon hub. Social, I prefer the word social impact hub of a change or a human innovation hub. It has huge economic value because it's commutable.
It does, but again, it's going back to that infrastructure element.
Yes,
it needs to be affordable transport for people, because you're right, face-to-face meetings are important.
Yes. Every so often,
Absolutely, and we need to ensure that we involve our transport, our logistics, our networks, and it is affordable for all of our generations.
So not just startups with funding.
Because what he said, a lot of our individual industries actually may be low paid or low value in terms of economic worth, and therefore it needs to be affordable, easy, and for every generation.
So until that is facilitated by government, which they're talking about, and again recently they're talking about Manchester's new train lines in 2040, until that happens, then I'm guessing from this conversation that I won't say solution, I don't like the word particularly, the solution is to use the net, the web, as the facilitator of that transport. So again, using the example of the lady with the training course who'd have to go out of county to become a dog groomer, then that becomes the web, doesn't it? That becomes the linking web, and it stretches from the four corners of the county, and it doesn't matter. I know we've got slight tech issues in a couple of places with internet access, and we always will have because there's a few mountains in the way. But in general, we could.
But with satellite now, there's like I read a recent business report about Cumbria, and there's still people when business mentors are going out to industry or small businesses are still listing internet connectivity as an issue, and I find that bewildering slightly, because there is such facilities now that yes, it's got a slightly higher cost, but if you're operating a business and it's worth the value of having it installed.
When we first moved to Cumbria up in the Fells, we ran on satellite broadband. The phone line was 6 miles of BT copper and uphill and down, and it was like talking through a bean can. That didn't work. And the mobile phones ran off the satellite, and you had the lag, but it worked. In Caroline, I believe, runs on
exactly the same satellite.
run on satellite broadband. So it does work, and there's advancements on satellite. So it isn't an insurmountable problem. It just we need to reimagine how we're going to use or facilitate that technology. So then it brings in, we could model what you're doing with Vino Web and Almanac, the wonderful work you're doing in Brazil, where you've actually engaged people rather than the top-down, old-fashioned hierarchical, we've got this solution.
But I think it goes back almost to your comment earlier about self-esteem. And we have we have some amazing people in the county, but one of the first things I hear all the time is, oh, I'm not clever enough to do that, I couldn't do that. And and actually, until we change that mind shift, actually, yes, you can. Yeah. And the joy of technology is that it enables us to talk, learn, communicate in different ways to traditional language. Yeah. We don't have to have high literacy levels. We don't have to have university degrees. We can actually talk in a very different way and communicate. And that's got to, if we can develop ways to create that self-esteem through different methods of communication with technology, then we have that power to change that mind shift of, I can't do that because I'm not bright enough. And I hear that so often, and it's absolutely rubbish because we have so many talented people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's not conventionally, maybe.
It is.
Or conventional perceptions.
It is. I mean, I'll take my husband as an example. My husband is one of the most intelligent people I know, but actually, if you put us down with qualifications, people would judge him so hard. I mean, he's a plumber by trade and a gas man. But he's one of the most talented, intelligent people I've ever met. But he would be the first to say, oh, I couldn't do that, I'm not good enough to do that. Yeah. Of course you are.
Why? Yeah.
Of course you are, but actually let's change that value, let's change that language and communicate in different ways. There is the other challenge that we have are the people who can't use technology. So how do we empower them to use that technology? How do we break down that fear? I mean, I think I'm probably one of the worst. We love to say, I can't do maths, I can't do computers. It's something we do in a very much a societal way. And actually, can we enable people to feel confident about using the technology and enabling the technology?
This was one of the challenges we had with the app. This is why we created the game. It's a way to people to be engaged with knowledge in a very nice way, but after that, the person is already created a relationship with the technology. So we break that barrier. So it was a very nice way to do it.
Yeah. You talk about Cumbria, and obviously you say we bring technology, and obviously Cumbria evolves. I think what's quite nice, so what you did with the app is how you obviously try and capture the history and sort of the culture of the area. I suppose, what did you learn from what you sort of captured and created, which maybe we could look to take, if say in Cumbria, what we may want to retain and how we can retain that in a productive way?
I think if I think about self-esteem, one of the final relationships that we haven't yet talked about is the relationship between people in Cumbria and, say, the rest of the UK. And so it's important to really highlight this technology to the rest, the rest, whoever they may be. Because this is part of a self-esteem. People now having something, an app, which, who has an app about your own community? It's still quite rare. And the idea is that we opened it up, not just for the schools, not just for the community, but it's like Godow, as the company, they featured it in their magazine, they talked about it on their corporate website. So that kind of sponsor, because they used their influence to say, look at what is happening here in this particular community. So this is the thing, make sure that you have a kind of communication strategy in place. So you think about how you're going to communicate, what channels, who can help, who are the sponsor, and again, when I say sponsor, I'm not talking about money, I'm saying who are the sponsoring stakeholders who can use their networks to help,
Simon, could you just explain to the audience watching who Godow are?
Oh, Godow, one of the world's largest steel and mining corporations. They're Brazilian, and they do very incredible work with social impact. They also work strongly with volunteer organisations, and they have their own mining museum in Minas Gerais as well. So they're very, very focused not just on the commercial side, but they have a huge number of projects throughout Brazil based on social impact, volunteering, and really working with the communities in which they're based.
And education as well.
Yeah, they work with education as well, yeah.
So it's interesting. So it's a business focused on a business for good as a model. So it's doing something. It's not just being a profit mining company. That's why I was asking as an illustration.
Yeah.
And I think we're very fortunate in Cumbria that we do have a large number of corporates who are very outward focused, are very community focused and invested in the young people.
Yeah.
And I think we are very fortunate that we have that position. It's actually how we enhance that and maximise the impact that they have.
Yeah.
I think there's, I mean, especially in Brazil, but this is all around the world, a lot of big businesses want to contribute, but they're struggling to find projects of quality to get involved in. And this is why we always say, Maria and I, we always help projects articulate the value that they can offer to the, you know, say the business and commercial communities, rather than focus on, oh, what can you do for me?
Yep.
No, what can we offer you and that can help you? And this is the idea of social impact as a service. You know, a lot of businesses are looking to be involved in social impact, but they don't necessarily have the quality projects. And with what we do, like measurement and impact is important, but we can really show it. Look at the number of young people that have been placed into careers that maybe wouldn't have had careers.
And I think impact is the key word. And
real impact.
Real impact. And I would also include qualitative impact. We're very focused as a society on quantitative impact. And again, many of our experiences, many of our articulate, is actually very much into that qualitative result, and again, better ways of measuring and more acceptance that qualitative results are absolutely as valuable as the quantitative would help.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, it comes back to this, use the word reimagine, it's coming back to reframing, how we see things, Caroline.
Absolutely.
You talked about reframing value, and the whole thing comes back to changing, you touched on mindset, right? It's belief. It's belief that it is possible. It is belief that I can do it, you can do it, Tracy can do it, Ashley can do it. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. Ben can do it. We've so been bullied, is probably the true word, into how we should behave in society, and that is one of the huge sticking points. So again, it comes back to education. I'm guessing through the internet, through technology, through providing webs of technology that link. So it's linking what the levels are doing. You talked about business investment. The levels project that Graham talked about, which live, is fantastic because the financial investment in the millions is huge for some of the local businesses and organisations, and otherwise it wouldn't have happened. But it's a belief that the change can happen, so it is possible. I'm going to say, I haven't watched the time, but I'm going to say thank you very much.
We really have reimagined. It's seriously reimagined.
That's very good.
Art of the possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you're most welcome. Thank you for being a guest on the first in-person sofa meetup. We, for the camera's sake, we plan to do these on a quarterly basis to continue this conversation. So I look forward to with your help reimagining Cumbria. Thank you very much.